For most of them, they've been in there several times. And what will happen again if they wait? I should be in the federal pen in Atlanta. I guess I shouldn't. I would have been if it didn't meant to be. But I was fortunate or unfortunate because it lingered my addiction out for a number of years through, I think, much more misery and living, walking hell in the streets and the gutters. But that's a little bit about what's going on at the prison, the state prison in Tennessee. We're in the state hospital, and a private country club AA-oriented hospital. We also have an NA meeting once a week there. And in the recovery house, we have 2 meetings a week. And in the state hospital, there are 3. It started out just being AA meetings, which we had an interest in. And it seemed like the AA members just drifted away, but it was like a couple of us or 3 of us that still continue to hold meetings. And they saw that we wasn't passing drugs or being a negative influence. There weren't a bunch of people coming in and doing negative things, and it drifted, as we were talking earlier, into 2 AA meetings and 1 NA meeting a week at the state hospital. Then it came to being 2 NA meetings and 1 AA meeting. Then now we just have strictly NA meetings at the state hospital. And in the openness and the sharing and the caring and the love that we have, and a drug is a drug is a drug, it works for anybody in that state hospital that I can see. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Sienkiewicz, drug addict.
Hi, Steve.
I'm from Milwaukee. I work in a rehabilitation hospital with adolescents. And where NA in the hospital is very strong. There's 2 meetings in the hospital a week. I'm involved, not really an organized panel, but I'm involved in carrying messages to adolescents who are in detention, boys' homes, children's prisons, whatever. And it's doing real well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm Bill. Sarah. WCNA. Yeah. I work for the Department of Mental Health in 5 counties in the jails. There's a judicial system in those counties that refer into Springfield to narcotics anonymous there with Mitchell. At the present time, I don't think he's in the room, but so far everything's going pretty good there. It's relatively new. There's a lot of AA there, but they're making some, and they're, I guess, sort of developing some NA meetings, and the growth is so far real good. Solid out.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nona, are you back there? What?
Everybody speak up a little bit.
Why don't we turn these air conditioners down lower, and then we can
Turn them
probably,
off.
yeah, we can probably hear better. Nona, why don't you tell us about your panels and a little bit about what you've done in the past? And
Nona, and I'm a drug addict.
hi, Nona.
Well, been into a lot of institutions, well, a lot. About 5 or 6 in California. And I remember when I was in an institution that the only program that he came in was Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't go to either one. I started a meeting in Soledad, North Facility, Soledad Prison in California, 1976. And at that time they had one annual meeting in the South Facility, and that's kind of like I'm getting close to the streets. What do you want to hear here, Henry? That we need to go into the institutions?
Well, no, just more. No, just more what you have done. What meetings that you're familiar with? Because a lot of us don't know what everybody else is doing. Probably a lot of people outside of California have never heard of Soledad. They don't know where that is or some of the other places. You never know. I mean, I know I've never heard of a lot of the other ones, so outside of California.
Well, there's a need for it. At that time, there was a need for it. There's always probably been a need for it, and will continue to be a need for it. And the way that my program works is if I don't give this thing back that I got, I don't get to keep it. And it means carrying the messages in places that are undesirable to me at times. The first institutional meeting that I started was the Women's County Jail in Salinas. And when I was walking through the door for the first Saturday meeting, I had the most eerie feeling in my gut because I'd never walked through that door willingly. They pulled me through it. I got kicked through it. I was drugged through it, you know. And to me, it's one of the greatest feelings I've ever experienced, being able to go in there and not worry if anybody hears what I'm saying, because I'm really there for me, because that's what the program tells me, that I came here to save my own ass. And Chuck was saying downstairs, somebody carries a message to me, I will carry it to one person, and one person will carry it to another, and that's how this thing grows, and how it has grown, because Bob and Chuck both were in on the beginning variety. We haven't been allowed to get into Soledad for a year because they've been rioting, people been stabbed, there's been a lot of disturbance of racial and otherwise conditions. And well, I flew to Los Angeles one time where I drove and I went into California Rehabilitation Center down by Chino with Henry. We go and we work for a little unit up in Ben Lomond, California, which is near Santa Cruz. I've talked to the UIA unit in Boulder Creek, Santa Cruz. I run a meeting for 2 years in Juvenile Hall in Salinas and Wichita Boys Ranch. These kids are locked up on the ranch. And it's all been a part of what got me here today. The reason I did that, I have a brother that spent 14 years in San Quentin and Folsom and Soledad. I drove through and out there practicing trying to do the game. And the first time they asked me to go in, I had a hot 60 days in the program. And the institution say you have to have 6 months. That's the requirement. And then when I had a hot 6 months in the program, I started going in, and I went in because I thought maybe in some way somebody would carry the message to my brother. I've never been able to get this emotionally involved. That's been the hard story for me trying to pass on. I don't care why anybody in the joint or wherever goes to a meeting, it could be to smell the perfume you got on, or to look at your legs, or get the coffee or the donuts or the sweet cigarettes, Only God knows why we all got to where we were supposed to get to so that we're all sitting here today. Quit trying to figure that out. The institutional work is really very rewarding to me.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name's Blair, drug addict and alcoholic. I guess what? Just to tell you how we're going.
Well, there's a list circulating out there, and what we like anybody who currently has a panel, or if you've had one in the past, for use with the conference institutional committee, if you could list your name, address, phone number, and the panel that you've had, or that you have now, it could help us kind of coordinate and get information out to you when we get it prepared, and like that, which there's a lot of communication I think that's basically lacking because we don't really know. We're working on some guidelines and some other literature, and when we get it published, we're not going to know where to send it. So that's like one of the main things. So if anybody has a panel, or if you're thinking about starting one, if you could put your name down on that list too.
I'm Ray and I'm married.
Ray.
I
I guess I just have one question. I heard that, are there already some institutional guidelines for NA that you use when you go into an institution? There already are some guidelines.
They was approved at the World Service Office this year, wasn't it?
The World Service Office has a set on file that we use for the Southern California Institutional Committee. And, basically it's just common sense, a lot of it. Don't stir up too much more shit than you can handle, and just just a lot of basic common sense. But there are also, a few maybe other things that might help. But
a lot of times when you go into these institutions, they want to start group therapy, and see, we're doing them a service. We don't need to be there. We go in and we carry the message of recovery for Narcotics Anonymous. And a lot of times, in Soledad, they wanted to show films or what do you want from this and that, and I just said, hey, motherfucker, it don't matter what you want, I'll come in for Narcotics Anonymous, and when that stops, I won't come back, because God's involved in this whole thing. It's quite as it gets sometimes. And that's all you're there for, is to carry the message of recovery. What you do, you have to, in California prisons, you have to have 6 months clean and sober before you continue with sobriety from all chemicals. And, you have to go in with knowing that you are inside some, a penitentiary, sometimes maximum penitentiary. And that you do have certain rules there. But once you have their meeting going, it's good to have the cause to be the secretary and so on and so forth. They run the group, sergeant and armed things, follow the guidelines like we do of Narcotics Anonymous, And if the facility don't agree with that, then we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be there, because this is NA.
I guess I've had a little bit of involvement with the mental health center, whatever, in Newton, about 20 miles from here. And they've got real strong AA, and it seems like what's real hard is the people that are in power, that are really heavy into AA, that a lot of those junkies and younger junkies and stuff coming through there, and addicts, whatever, they get pushed into AA, and they don't get exposed that much to NA. And that's been my experience.
okay, well, maybe some of the things that those of us up here are going to talk about, we may be able to tell you how we've gotten around some of those problems where we've been working. I'll tell you just one of the things that I've been doing lately in California. We've been trying to do a little bit of instigating and conniving and jiving among the convicts to get some kind of interest going. We just finished up what's really the social season out there with all our banquets, socials, and parties and benefits and whatever that we've had. And that's one of the things that can keep the convicts interested in doing something positive instead of negative, because a lot of these guys in California, they didn't know that they had a banquet coming in the summertime. And so, we told them, you think you guys know what's happening in this joint? Let me give you the game and tell you, you got to get the lieutenant down here, and you've got a banquet coming. And he came down and said, you've got a choice whether you want roast beef or steak. And that's the only thing that means anything to these motherfuckers. They don't care, maybe right in the beginning, about coming around the program. And a lot of us, you'll hear, will tell you that the first time somebody comes around, it may be just to get a steak, it may be to see a lady, it may be to get a cup of coffee and a donut, and some of these people up here will tell you, we wound up staying for 10 and 20 years after that, and when they came in maybe for the wrong motives. And also we try to get a little juice to get some financial power out at CIM, the California Institute for Men. They have a senior citizens group, and they got the lieutenant to okay them to collect all the aluminum cans out there. And those suckers are worth $1.50 a piece now. NA got the franchise on the aluminum out in one of the facilities out there, and they've been bringing in some good money. So they're going to buy a coffee pot, and they're going to have coffee. We haven't had coffee at that meeting for 2 years, and we're going to get some cookies and cakes and donuts. and we'll probably get a little bit more support. There'll probably be some people who would not normally come. So this is what I said about convicts know how to hustle, but you got to give them the game and tell them, you know, well, you do this, and if you hustle, you can get this together, and that's all they care about is something to do, you know, to hustle, rather than all the negative things that we get into. So that's just what I've been doing lately, is, you know, trying to instigate some of these instincts that we have for conniving and putting them into a positive rather than a negative direction. Anyway, we do have a few people up here on a... Oh, we got one more hand out there?
Yeah, my name's John, and I'm calling drug addict.
Hi, John.
I don't know, one of the things for me, I had it pretty much laid out to get into a road camp, but I didn't have any support from the group that I was with. I think a lot of the people, they're set in their ways of staying straight. And if, you know, people come in off the street, you know, then sure they'll give a hand sometimes. But it's you know, it's pretty fucked up. I've learned a hell of a lot just in the past 24 hours after talking to a lot of people. But one thing that I wanted to, you know, make sure of, I talked a little bit about it last night or something, but can one person, well, I got two questions. Number one, can one person go out and start an NA meeting, or does it have to be a group?
No, just one person.
Okay, and then also the thing about the you know, in not being under surveillance. I got some people that said fuck surveillance.
Well, no. One thing you have to understand, that institutional meetings, our institutional meetings are not really part of Narcotics Anonymous per se, because there's certain traditions like that one that do not apply. There are also other things like the only requirement for membership, like the third tradition, where you run into problems because you can't take a newcomer if you smack back with you to the meeting in the joint that night. There's like a few other different traditions, you know, maybe 3 or 4 other ones that come into play, and that's what makes it an institutional meeting. It's not a regular meeting, it's something special, and that's why we have a special way of carrying the message, you know, for that.
Thanks a lot. I'm learning a hell of a lot.
Henry, I got a question on that. In our NA meeting at the VA hospital there in Topeka, you know, in the past we've been asked to take attendance of the patients that are assigned to go to that meeting. We haven't done this.
What, they asked you to take it?
Either us to take it or to put somebody at the door to take it.
Well, you tell them if they want to take it, but you don't have to take it.
Okay.
I mean, unless they won't let you in if you don't take it or something like that. You can go along with them, but...
we've been able to work around it. There was a sheet drawn up that they were given, you know, on their initial assessment, and when they were assigned to this meeting, and it was brought in just like, you know, what the court system uses when they send a person to so many meetings, say, per week, and the chairperson or whoever at that meeting signs it that they were there.
No, that's another thing that we have to do. We have to bend over backwards whenever possible to work with the authorities in any institution, just to beg them sometimes to let us in to talk to who's ever in there, so that we can stay clean and to carry the message. And we have to put up with all kinds of bullshit. Gun towers, guns trained on us, x-ray machines, strip searches, you know, I don't give a fuck. You know, because whatever it takes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eddie. Just personal experience of being on both sides of that wall, a lot of problems. But you can get support a lot of times from the guy that ain't never been through that scene, that want to run off in there and jack his jaw. And then you walk out of there and half them old convicts and dope fiends in there saying, where is this son of a bitch coming from, you know? He ain't never spent a day in jail, but he's down there talking to me. It helps, but a lot of times it turns a lot of people off behind them bars. And in them institutions, too, when you've got some 16-year-old kids running off in there, yakking about eating Valiums and his old man pissing him off, you know, and here's some dude doing a life sentence or 15, 20 years for armed robbery, and he's wondering, where is he fucking coming from? Oh, he's a dope fiend and he's straight. I said that many times myself. The only thing we could hope for, and the only purpose I hope for going into any institution is that it'll remain in their head, because I didn't come to the program after hearing that shit. I went right back out and did it some more, but when I finally made it here, I still remember them times making him eat the donuts, to drink the coffee, to smell the perfume, to see the leg, and hope I get a tit shot. You know? I ain't had it for goddamn 6 years, you know? No shit. And it's necessary. We gotta motivate that interest right now. And it's tough. And also a stumbling block we've hit is, what is NA? And having to just take them, what literature you got, and saying, this is what we are. And then keeping the bad apple from coming with you. We got kicked out of penitentiaries first. Bringing suspecting souls that are supposed to be carrying the message, and instead they're packing the pot and the reds and the spikes off in there, you know, and getting the whole thing fucked up. Because they feel sorry for that poor guy doing time and want to take him a little boost, you know. Yeah. And, you know, it's a shame, but that happens when you're fighting them odds anytime you step over that line, you know.
It seems that people that you would ask in the penitentiary are just not anybody that walk across the street and drag them there. Would be people that you know would be working in programs that are clean and have some principles in their lives.
Yeah, hopefully what we can do is, you know, with whatever we got to work with, we do the best we can. Maybe some days we may be stuck with a 16-year-old kid who just smokes weed, and you know, the next time we may get a murderer, dope fiend, convict, gangster, you know, and we got to work with everyone we got to work with and what we got. Let's move on up to the panel up here. We'll start with Fred and move across here and just tell us a little bit about the time you've done and whatever else, carrying the message and all that.
Well, my name is Fred, and I'm a very grateful addict and alcoholic. And I was asked to sit on this panel because the person didn't show up, and I've been deprived of going into any prison in California because I'm kind of like aced out of every prison because I've been in all of them, major penitentiaries in California. I've done time in all of them. Matter of fact, I've done about 16 years locked up in these prisons, and I used to be affiliated with the gangs in there, and the administration, the Department of Corrections, do not let me even go to the front door to visit people. You know, they just don't want me there. And but I do a lot of institutional work. Matter of fact, I work in recovery, and I work with adolescents. They refer them to me from juvenile hall. Instead of them doing time, I go into juveniles and have meetings with them, and I have sort of like not NA meetings because I break a lot of traditions. So it's like almost like house meetings, but I kind of like tell them about Narcotics Anonymous and stuff like that. And I really get thrilled because that's as far as I could get as far as institutional work, and I feel like I need to go back into prison. Sometimes I've tried going into Elmwood and they say no. The county jail, they say no. We've tried writing a letter to Solidad. They said no. And but it's been 5 years, and it's been a couple of years since I've tried again, you know, and what I'm hoping for, if it's God's will, I'm gonna put in for one of those pardons, and once I get a pardon, then I could kind of clean up my record there and go under another name or something. I don't know. But when I did time in prison, you know, I remember going to AA meetings to get out of the cell block. Not to go, you know, I didn't know. You know what? I didn't get exposed to this program until I was on the street. But I went to AA meetings because they had women there, and it was better than being in the cell block. And when I would go out there in the AA meetings, and I would hear these people talk, there were these old men from AA. And I just used to say, well, this motherfucker's from the Last Supper. I guess he had it cleaned up, you know. Or he's too antique or something, you know. But I was eating the donuts and checking out the broads, you know, and doing my trip there, you know. But what gassed me, you know, is that I could see now back to where I was at then, where my head was at then. I was hurting inside, but seeing the pride and the front and the image and being a convict and being cool didn't allow me to, you know, to be me, you know. I mean, to let the inside of me come out in a meeting like that. So I used to sit way in the back and eat the donuts and check out the brats. But I remember the times when I was in the cell, and to myself, I used to appreciate those once a week meetings and the people, because they used to be different than the guards and the convicts. You know, they talked about love, which I was lacking a lot of love inside and all that. So my tapes run back now that I'm out here, and I really get angry, you know, because they won't let me in those prisons. But I put myself there too. I just want to say one more thing is that when I came to this program, this is how come they don't want me in prisons right now. And this is only in California. Maybe if I move to another state, I'll be all right. But when I came here, I had an A number, then I had a B number, then I had an N number. They even erased me from CRC, the narco N number, because I did time there too. And then I was on probation from the county jail. So you can understand, I had 2 parole officers and a probation officer. And you can understand why they don't want me in those places, you know, because they figure that somebody said something about take dope in there. They don't believe that I'm clean and sober. They just won't accept it. And it's a struggle. And I get a lot of pressure from my peers. Somebody was talking about a 16-year-old kid going into these prisons. And I know every Chicano from the one, not everyone, but I know I could go in any prison in the state of California today and know somebody that knows me, you know, and know that I was a dope fiend and an addict and an alcoholic and whatever, and that I shot long dope and that I was a, you know, regular asshole just like the rest of them. And from one part of the state to the other part of the state, I could go in any penitentiary and they know that they're looking at a miracle, just like we talk about miracles in this program. And that's what I resent, that I can't walk in those prisons so that they could see that this program works, you know. But they got the word, because see, when they get out, they call me. You know, they say, is it true that you're clean and sober? Yeah, it's true. I got to see it. And then they come around and I take them to meetings and I work like that. But I feel like I'm being deprived, and I've been fighting those people. You know, I've been fighting them. Not as hard as I should, but I was telling my friend here, I said, you know what, I need to get on it. And he's giving me some ideas on how to do it, you know. He told me, why don't you try it again, you know, and that's what I want to do. I know that once I get it back and get into those institutions, you know, I'm not saying that I'm going to save the world or anything, but all I'm saying is that I know that that's going to be like sweet home for me, you know. It's going to be something that my heart wants to do, you know, because that's where I come from. I come from the penitentiaries. I was state raised, you know, and that's where my head's at today, you know. And I'm really glad you asked me to talk, you know, because I really felt like I didn't belong. I even told him, I said, what could I say? I don't do it, you know. I only work with NLSs. That's as much as it, you know, as I do. I work with juveniles, you know, and then I work with convicts that come to a recovery house. But that's as far as it goes, you know, and you know, and I don't got too much. I haven't had a meeting in an institution other than a juvenile ranch, you know, and then it wasn't even NA, it was AA. But it was youngsters, and I was in YA and ranches too, and when I was younger, and I found I need to go there, and I took a meeting there for 6 months and work institutions that way too. And then I would go in hospitals, Park Alameda, and work with alcoholics on 12-step calls like that, you know, and really try to do things like that. But what I really want to do is go into those prisons, you know, and hopefully they'll let me go in one of these days. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Chuck. I'm an addict. Hi, Chuck. I would kind of like to talk about some of the things that happened in the beginning. And you people in some of these outlying areas are in the beginning. You're going to run into some of the things that we ran into. The difference now than when Bob and I were in the penitentiary, if it had you good-looking girls coming out, we'd been sitting up in the front row stiffing carbon tab instead of in the back row. The main thing that you want to get away from is numbers. About 2% of the people in Narcotics Anonymous is going to do the work. And you are evidently the 2% because you're here. So get away from numbers. Number two, remember when you go into these institutions that the people inside the institutions are working two programs. Their main program is to get the fuck out of there. And if it included sucking the warden's pee-pee, I would have been up there doing that to get the hell out of there. Whatever. So you got to remember that these people come to these places to get the chronos, to do these various things. And something was said about taking people in that are AA-orientated or whatever, or somebody that's loaded. If you're carrying a panel into an institution, it is your responsibility to screen the people you take in. It is far better that you go by yourself and take some fool. Bob and I can attest to that. We've driven thousands of miles together in the beginning because there was nobody else. We'd have a half a dozen people all lined up for Saturday morning to make a 275-mile trip, and you go around to get them, and each one of them, oh, I got the rag on, I got a headache, I got to go to work, and we wind up driving 275 miles by ourselves, cussing all these ungrateful sons of bitches, of course. But then when we got there, it was the thing that we were going for was to keep us clean and sober one more day, and hopefully to carry the message. The other thing that I lost my train of thought there. The main thing to remember is that you go in to carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. You don't go in, you don't promise anything that you cannot deliver. Do not go in and tell convicts a lie. That's one of the first ways to get yourself in trouble. You don't promise anything that you can't deliver. Jobs, money, girls. You've got to remember that our only thing is to carry the message. And the institution sometimes, you don't get the right reception that you'd like. You've got to remember when we go in there that there are two factions in most penitentiaries in California. You have the program side and you have the custody side. You very seldom see the program side. You see the custody side, and to the custody side we're a pain in the ass. It's another movement that they've got to make. And they would just soon we'd stay out. So you have to keep that smile on your face and keep your tongue bit so you don't tell them to go fuck themselves and a few things like this. And carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. The little things that Henry was talking about, we've run into a lot of problems in those areas, in having dances and having banquets and all these things. Hell, why not? The guys inside, they'll do anything to break the monotony. And a lot of times you get a group going in there. I'd like to quote one time from Tehachapi, and several years ago, we had been having banquets up there. We'd been putting on entertainment. They called it the Christmas program. And they only let the registered members of Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous in the penitentiary come to the meeting. And this one time, we went up there, and all the girls came decked out in their miniskirts, and they released the whole institution. And of course, some of the convicts surrounded most of the girls, and they pinched them on the ass, bit them on the tit, kissed them on the neck, and the girls were mortified. This is horrible. Shit, you're up there with some guys that haven't smelled perfume in 20 years. So, you know, if the ladies are going up there, you go dressed as a lady, you act as a lady, and you'll be treated as a lady. If you go up there showing your ass, somebody's going to look for it. I know I would have. I'd have been sitting right up on the front row laying on the floor if I'd have thought I could have got a piece. And these guys are the same way. But don't ever underestimate the people. the guy that's sitting on the back row, giving you cat calls and a few other things, he's probably the asshole 6 months from now that'll be sitting up in the front seat, or he'll be the secretary of the meeting, or he'll be the man that comes out, and the guy that's in there you really think's got it all together will never show up. So don't underestimate who's going to make it or who isn't. The rules and regulations of the penitentiary take precedence over our rules and regulations of Narcotics Anonymous. We are their guests, and we have to act as their guests. Number two, in starting out, we run into this problem, and that is letting your mouth overload your ass. Like I said, 2% of the people are going to do the work. Now, you know, you compare to Alcoholics Anonymous in Los Angeles area, I imagine they've got 75,000 registered members of Alcoholics Anonymous. 2% of 75,000 is far greater than 2% of about 3,000. And we get overzealous and we start panels here, we start panels there, we start panels someplace else. We got more panels than we know what to do with. And pretty soon we burn ourselves out. And instead of going back and telling the people that we're no longer able to support this panel and we're going to have to drop it at this time, we just drop it. And to get that panel started again under these conditions is harder than it was to ever start it in the first place. Because custody and the program people there say, well, we had Narcotics Anonymous here once, but they didn't do anything. And we make a bad mark. So it is far better to start one meeting and support that one meeting than it is to spread yourself so thin that you can't cover it. It takes a lot of dedication, and I think that the people that do institutional work are the same as me or anybody else that is real active in the institution. That is, that you want to go back to where you got it. Like I said, some 20-some years ago, I sat up at Quentin, sitting on the back row, listening to the old alcoholic come in. I was sniffing the carbon tet rag, and you know, I was over there to shoot the shit with my buddy. I was programmed there. I had to go, and in my opinion, I would never go again when I got out. But it was good for, you know, shoot the shit with your buddy, cut up old touches and one thing and another, and sniff the carbon tet rag. So I did this. But I'm here today, and if I hadn't have been in there sniffing that carbon tet rag, I'd have probably never been here today. That's why I say don't ever underestimate anybody in the room. You never know who is going to get the message. When you go, be committed. And screen the people that you take in with you. Because one guy carrying an outfit can close the whole program out. One girl going in to see her boyfriend can close the whole program out. And as a panel member, we are responsible. We're responsible not only for that panel, but we're responsible to NA as a whole, and it will just go. And as you carry the message in there, and it's going to take some time, but as you carry the message in there, you'll find other institutions in your area will open up to you and be calling you, and you won't have this terrible fight of having to go beg to get in. In California, if we could, I know that we could triple the panels and institutions that we have today, but we just don't have the people to cover them. And as long as we're covering the ones we have, as more people come in, well, we pick up one institution at a time, get that covered, and from there we progress now. What's the count on the institutions now, Henry, in Southern California?
We've got about 17. They're not all penitentiaries. We're starting to count recovery houses, and then in that number too. So, and with those, it's 26.
But in the beginning, it wasn't that easy. We were fortunate in Narcotics Anonymous. I happen to know the program director of the Sierra Conservation Center. He was a lieutenant in Quinton when I was there. And he became program chairman, and like I say, he gave us all of Sierra Conservation Center. We had it so well made there that went up to one of the camps one night, and some lieutenant told me I was still just nothing to him but a goddamn convict. And Mr. Pricky told him, says, that son of a bitch is going to look good on the midnight shift back at the center. And he jerked him out of the camp and took him back up there. We had it that well made. 6 months later, we didn't have a panel at any camp because we were not able to support them. We dropped them. And then they dropped us. Now then we're building back up to where we're able to carry the message to the people where we have panels. So build a foundation, screen your people, and carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous, and things will grow. It takes time. Thank you.
My name is Bob, and I'm an addict. And Chuck covered it pretty well, because I think one of the things that we find is that we overextend ourselves. We always promise great things, more than we can carry. And I think one of the biggest things here is that part of that dedication which we're talking about becomes very important. And you need people, I think that announcing at meetings usually is not enough. You have to corner people in a corner. Well, literally, maybe literally put them in the corner. But you know, we're not ones to volunteer very readily for a job to be done or work to be done. Rather for you to do it. And we'll take the credit for it, but we'll rather for you to do it. So I think one of the things that becomes very important is, say, sometimes I hear the announcements being made, and I think sometimes we have to carry a little book in our pocket and make people make commitments. And make them take responsibilities for those commitments that they make. I found that very important, because I have a little private list and say, even with having an institutional committee, I had my own little private little book. You know, I used to have people that I could almost rely on at the last moment even, say, hey, I got people that drop me, can you go? And they'd go. Now, you find those people that will do those particular things and be that dependable. And they are few. But I think that's what we have to do. We have to cultivate, we have to take the responsibility to cultivate this group of people that's going to carry this message in these particular institutions. Both women and men that's going to carry the message into these institutions. Because it becomes very important as to say, to the message that they have. And I think sometimes you have to be aware if do they have a message or not. Because we are here again, you know, we want to respond and be very profound, and I'm going to save you from this here malady of addiction or what have you. Not really realizing that very often these things are called get-out games. See, I know how to play the get-out game. See, you get as many programs and as many chronos and as many goodies to carry to the board to show you that you're doing all these great things. And that's how you get out. At least under some conditions, that's how you get out. I happen to have a parole board told me, said I was good at that. And he didn't want none of it.
Please turn your tape, do not rewind. Turn your tape and continue on side 2.
And there is a difference in this get-out game and the stay-out game. And that's one of the things that I didn't have no stay-out game. I knew how to get out. I just didn't know how to stay out. And I think that's part of the game that we're trying to message, we're trying to carry into the institution in terms of the stay-out game. And the stay-out game being practicing some recovery so that you won't have to come back into these types of places. And I think this is one of the things I think as panel members or people that are interested in institutions is to finding people that are interested in going back in to carry that message of how you're staying out. And the people to carry that message back in also. Regardless of say the person sitting in the back of the room or the front of the room, it doesn't make any difference. Because my reflections are there. The messages to me very often. The person who's coming in may say just that little something that give me a little hope that I can stay out. And I think that becomes very important. I know that the task is great. I know the tremendous task. I was one of the first, in a institutional chairman for about 5 years, and I turned it over to the next person, and I couldn't get nobody else to take it, almost like Henry here. We're going to have elections, and I want somebody else to take over and take charge of it. The person I turned it over, he held it for about 5 years, And I realize it's a task. But I think part of the thing is that you have to be willing to do some of those things. And you have to cultivate those people that's going to do those particular things. And I mean actually cultivate, get to know the people. You become intimately involved with the people. It has been a great saving for me in many ways because I became very intimate with those people that I was involved with. Those trips, I had done things with those people. I became closer to those people. They became closer to me. They got to know me better. And very often this is the case. Like addicts by and large, they don't want, if you're like me, I don't want you to know me too well. Then you know when I'm playing a game. Or know when I'm going off half-cocked. And I don't want you to point it out. And so I'll stay off in a corner by myself so you can't see that. But if I'm in your presence long enough, and I'm doing these things that I normally do, you will, intuitively you will know. Just by some instinct, you will know. If that sucker's off in a bad hole or something's going on wrong, you'll know. And I think this is what we're trying to do, to come closer as a group of Narcotics Anonymous also at the same time still try to carry the message to those that are unable to get the message any other way. Under adverse conditions of being locked up, trying to get a message over to that person in those conditions. It's very difficult. There's too many obstructions in the way. Too many obstacles, very often overcome. There's always usually one or two out there in the crowd that does me good to see them coming to a meeting and say, I remember you when you came up to there and you spoke over there or you done something over there. Well, that does me all the good in the world. I don't remember them, but they remember to say I was there at some given time. And I think that becomes very important. So that's about it. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everybody here that we had circulated a list for anybody who's interested in institutional work, anybody who has a panel now or had one in the past. If you could put your name down here for communications purposes. Okay, is there anybody else here who has a panel or has one who's come in late and would like to tell us about it? I can't hear you.
I'm Ron at Alcoholics.
Hi, Ron.
I'm the Wichita Association. Generally, we have one panel doing a meeting at the Alcohol Treatment Center at a hospital here. That's the only meeting we have. Meet once a year.
Okay, but it's a start, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. My name's Robin, I'm an addict and alcoholic.
Hi,
Robin. I'm
I'm a sucker for NA and institutions. And I went to the last convention in Atlanta and got to the H&I committee meeting late. And all I remembered from that committee meeting was that that you might have to subject yourself to strip searches, like was said, and you know, surveillance and all of that. And I went back to South Florida and was elected H&I chairman. And I went out and started a meeting at one of the work release centers. And after I chaired that for 6 months, I turned it over to somebody else and started another institution meeting. And what it comes down to is like we got about 5 institution meetings, and I've turned down about 3. and like Chuck said, Bob said, we get, you know, burnt out. And I've been burned out now for like 6 months, but I just keep going back because I'm a sucker. But I was at my home group meeting the other night. You know, like I figure I'm gonna be turning over the chairmanship to somebody else pretty soon, hopefully. But I wanted to, you know, like lay the groundwork for the institution meetings that are still going. Some of them are failing. You know, like we had one meeting where I was invited to come out to the first meeting we started and participate in a program designed for the rehabilitation of the men in the institution. So I was one of the people that was asked out there, and I was told by the director that he wanted to make his institution drug-free. Right? So you know, going along with that, he wanted to make it mandatory for anybody that was busted walking into the place with drugs to come to our meeting, and like, you know, mandatory forever, you know, until they had left. And you know, I couldn't go for that. And I talked him into doing it for just 4 weeks. And I didn't like that either. You know, I really didn't like that either, you know, being mandatory to go to a meeting. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made, you know, with what he was talking about, because he said that the addict will come to the meeting, sit there for 4 weeks, and he might hear something. You know, and it might not do him any good tonight, and it might not do him any good in 5 years. But somewhere down the road, he's going to remember something he heard and come back to the meeting. And it proved out with somebody that came to a meeting just last week. I forgot my question. But the thing is this, you know, it's like, okay, you know, like, I had a meeting at South Florida State Hospital. And it was in one wing, and there's 3 wings. That's the forensic unit, which is everybody waiting to go to trial. And started out with one meeting, and they, you know, talking about maybe later we'll get the 3 meetings and put them together. So that's what we did. We got the 3 units and put them together. And then 2 weeks ago, I was told the correction unit doesn't want these guys out after 8 o'clock at night, so we're going to have to split it back up again. Could you get somebody else to have another meeting started in another wing? And I really felt pressed. So I asked a friend of mine who had been coming out to the meetings for a couple of times. He said, sure, I'd love it, you know, and that relieved me quite a bit. 2 days later, I was called up again and said, the other wing wants their own meeting. Can you do it? And I said, no. You know, no. You know, I can't do it. Chuck, you know, mentioned about, you know, like meetings failing. You know, like by laying this, what I did before I left was try to lay the meetings on each group. You know, we got several meetings a week, and I tried to get the meetings in Broward County to take responsibility for those institution meetings. You know, it's only been 2 weeks now. I don't know if it's going to work. You know, I'll see. I'll wait and see what, you know, what happens. But I don't, you know, like, is there any kind of literature around, or you know, did you guys come up with anything, you know, besides? Like, I've never seen nothing, man.
We've got our guidelines. I don't know what specifically.
I've never seen anything.
Okay, those are on file at the World Service Office. I don't have any with me, but they are on file at the World Service Office. We're also working on guidelines for the conference, but that's only going to be for inner workings of, you know, that won't actually affect the local groups per se. It's just, you know, for communication and when we're going to elect the officers and how that proceeds at the conference level. That's not too important to the local groups, but there are suggested guidelines for the local groups on how to function, how to elect officers, what's a good length of sobriety to have to go into an institution, you know, all the little things that you need to know. And they're on file at the World Service Office. Well, just write them and just write, and we'll send you a copy.
Do you guys have an address?
Yeah.
What, for our committee or for the guidelines?
Institutions and hospital committee.
Well, you can write us in care of the office, Box 622, Sun Valley. And just mark it to somebody's attention or whatever, and we will get it.
I thought that's what that list was for.
Well, this list is for mailing purposes. When we get other things finished, we are going to get some mailings out of any new IPs that we come out with, literature guidelines, and the rest of that. But if you need something specifically, we've got other things on file. We've got labels for the little cans that we pass around at meetings to collect money for literature. We've got those guidelines. You may want somebody's address or phone number to get in touch with them because you may be traveling and you may be in another state and you want to go to a meeting. And so if you don't have it, you can say, well, I'm going to be in, you know, Arkansas. I wonder if I, you know. So there's that. One other thing, too, talking about people coming to meetings, they told me I had to go to meetings. Really, I kind of went, I didn't really have too much choice about it myself. And even today on the streets, I take newcomers to meetings, even if they don't want to go against their will. I don't care. I didn't want to go. It was kind of like against my will, really. If I had my way about it, I wouldn't have gone. And I don't think it matters why people are at meetings. And I think, too, what Chuck said, I've seen the guys in the back of the room that are saying, fuck you, you're lying, and all this. A lot of those will make it. You know, the ones that maybe don't give a fuck to even say that. It's one of the things that my sponsor tells me. There's the people that make it are the ones that do that, or the ones that are real super willing, and they'll do anything you tell them. And the people in the middle have a hard time. But if you're at one end or other of the spectrum, you probably got a better chance of making it.
I'm Don Coleman, addict and alcoholic. I don't, you know, really understand a lot about the institutional meetings. I've been to the Leavenworth Disciplinary Barracks, and I've been to the Leavenworth Penitentiary here, and I've been out to the Diagnostic Center. I was on the list to go out there, but I'm on probation through the state of Kansas now, and my probation officer's next con. I don't understand. He let me go to the disciplinary barracks. I was okay to go there. I was going to YCAT outside Topeka there, which is juveniles. I was going to those meetings there, and all of a sudden, you know, I was yanked from going to that one. And I didn't know if there's, you know, state statutes against this or exactly what, because I was allowed to go to the federal joint, but I wasn't allowed to go into the state. You know, whether juveniles or not.
You have to make sure that you have permission, because they can violate you and send you back where you came from if you don't have permission to go, either for association, and that's one problem. You have to make sure that you, if you're on probation or parole, that you have a clearance and you've got permission and authority to go in anywhere you're going to go.
Henry, I just want to say before, you know, the four ladies left this room, do you have any hang-ups about lockup unit of the facility. And what it takes is maybe starting a meeting on Saturday when you got people doing weekends and they're in there for alcohol or drugs and stuff like that, and being consistent of showing up every Saturday, say at 2 o'clock, after they say it's okay. Because we're a pain in the ass with the authority. You know, they don't care if anybody gets any help in there most of the time. You know, 99% of the time, they don't give a shit if anybody gets any help. So you go in there with your best foot forward and you tell them what you'd like to do, and you give them the pamphlet. And if you don't have anybody, you know, you could set it up with the jailer to call like at 1:30 and ask them, do I have any women that would like to attend an NE meeting in there? And they'll ask around, and then you show up so you don't make the trip. And that's what I did for about 6 months in Salinas. And sometimes there'd be one woman there, or, you know, there would be 6 or 7. And as far as Chuck was talking about getting pinched on the ass and the joint and stuff like that, I went in Soledad prison for 4 years and never been pinched on the ass. You know, I've had a few catwalks filled with guys making eyes at the stairs, you know, sitting in the back of the room, and sometimes a little note attached to me, but it never killed me, you know. And after I'd been going in for about 8 months, I had some surgery done, and I received a card from Soledad prison that was this big, and that was handed down and painted by one of the cons, and 75 names were on that card by the guys that were locked up. And, you know, and I made it clear to them I wasn't in there to take phone numbers or dates. I made it clear to them that I don't write nobody institutions. And I made it clear to them, like Chuck said, that I can't give them a place to sleep or a car to drive or a job or anything like that, you know. Sometimes I could promise on my own that for the day they were released, they were going to be released in our county or something, that maybe I could give them a ride from one destination to the other and things like that. But I kept myself uninvolved with them as far as trying to socialize with them and stuff like that. And it's important because their heads will run with it. You know, right away they want to fall in love with you because, you know, you're out there and stuff like that. But just make it clear that you're in there to carry the message. And they understand that, but there are a lot of women that don't want to go in. I don't see nothing wrong with a short skirt, you know, and the low-cut blouse if that's their trip. You know, we're talking about sobriety.
Like I said, don't stir up more shit than you can handle. If you can handle it, fine.
That's right. But we represent it as attraction rather than promotion. And if you go in looking like a hooker, that's what you're going to be treated like. So,
we have one other, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, so that's alcohol. I was never in a institution of any sort, but I do a lot of institutional work now that I'm sober. And it does me a world of good, you know, because I know that if I ever use it, I mean, that's where I was headed for. Since I'm a female and I've been paid a lot more than men. But it does me a lot more good than it causes anybody else. And I kind of got rebuffed when people said, you know, you haven't been there before, they're not going to listen to you. But I don't think that would stop me from going.
Oh, they'll listen to you.
I've never been in jail. I'm Tom. I'm a drug addict now. Other maybe a month, one night at a time, or a day at a time. But I did a lot of that, you know, going institutions. And it helps me. They put pressure on me. I asked me how the hell are you going to be a real straight sober? You can't get an average bud. Some days you find roller skating. Yeah, it does me good. They ask you questions you never ask yourself. It really makes you think. I get more out of going to other meetings, but than I do going to regular meetings myself. But I go there and tell them I go there for myself. That if you go there, if you're a you got to do yourself a damn bit of good. You're not going to do them anything if you go for yourself.
Okay, there's just one thing I want to add in here. I think we do have another meeting coming in. I got one announcement, and one thing that's very special that we have a youth authority facility out in Whittier that we go into, and it's a whole different trip sometimes to carry the message to the youngsters, the kids. You know, I found that we have to bring ourselves down to their level and go in talking shit and low riding, and I take the white books along and like that, like I'm dealing cards. I pick up, what do you got? It's a white book. Check it out, read it, and and we go around the room and have them introduce themselves and tell them, give us your first name and tell us what kind of dope you like best, and then at least they're admitting to something, because a lot of them are not going to tell you they're an addict. They don't even know what that means really. But we go around the room and they will tell us what kind of dope they like best, because this is in a dorm where everybody is put in there because of dope. And if they don't relate to us, they're going to be the ones that are there talking about how we're the old farts, just like we were there talking about how these old farts were coming in talking to us, and the old fart is on the other foot then, So that's, we have to remember that. And but these little assholes were doing all kinds of things. We brought broads in there, and they were jacking off during the meeting, right while these broads were talking. And I mean, there's some crazy little youngsters locked up in there, And we had some old-time convicts that just would not go back in there anymore. And then I got one dude, this Chicano lowrider from out right near the joint there, and he went out there, and a miracle happened. All of a sudden, these guys turned into little gentlemen, And he's pretty young himself, and he relates to him, and it just came off right. And sometimes he talks to him a lot in Spanish. And a lot of these things are important to relate, because if they don't respect you, they are going to be doing that shit. You couldn't bring women in there. I brought one woman in. They didn't pinch her. They grabbed the whole ass, And she turned around and beat the fuck out of them, though. So but all of these things are going to happen. And but we have to do the best we can, like I said. But we do have to come down to their level and relate to them. I found, or we don't get the respect. That's just one thing that happened. Got one more handout here somewhere. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just want to say, we started our hospital institution thing without those guidelines. It wasn't getting a little unstable. We use those guidelines, and the whole thing's a lot stronger. It's more, it's a lot more organized together. Those guidelines look good, but getting them now, so.
How did you get them? You said you got the guidelines?
Yeah.
How did you get them? How did you get them?
To the World Service Office.
Okay, well that's what I told everybody to do.
As a matter of fact, I think I should call and left my address and record a message and send it.
Right. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Go ahead.
My name's Larry. I just want to know, I go into some institutions. What I want to know is, when you go in there, like I identify myself and tell them a little bit about the way I was, but then I really stress on, how I'm staying sober, how I'm making it in the street through NA. I just like through an hour and a half, say the meeting is, how do you do it, How long have you, what kind of war story?
Well, like I said, a lot of these guys have to relate for it. Most of them may not even be ready to hear you give a long talk about the fifth and sixth step, and and how to make amends and all that, and especially the youngsters, and sometimes even all they're going to want is to listen to the women talk about all the tricks they turned and all the dicks they sucked, and a lot of the ones that we go in, they tell them about that, the first time I ever went to an institution, this chick was saying what a bitch it was to get up in the morning and sick, and you got to suck cock, and your nose is running all over it. And that was the first time I ever went to an institution. And they want to hear that shit. They relate to it.
I like to answer that too. That Mike, you're talking about adolescents? Are you talking about juveniles now, or older people? Okay, well, I could, the attraction comes from war stories. This is basically what he's talking about. And like war stories, you could share your experience and your strengths. Like I could get in and talk from the side of my neck and talk war stories. That attracts them because that's where their heads are at. In other words, you're talking about an environment that holds up an image. In other words, you don't tell another convict, I love you, I care, I'm hurting. A convict I mean, if you have a convict, you don't go like this, because a convict, his mind is hardcore. His mind is, macho, hold his mouth, look mean, put his cap down, drop it, you know what I'm saying? That's a convict, so when you walk in there, when you walk in the penitentiary, I'm not asking you to walk in there, be like them, but the thing is, if you respect That's their whole life right there. You respect that by telling them right on, man. And if they want to run it to you and tell you a little war story about what's happening, then let them run it, you know. But never try to, just like you were saying, get them on a trip with the staff, because that's not where their heads are at. The thing is, it's just being there and giving them love and trying to listen to them, or trying to carry the message with experience straight to home. Bring ex-convicts that are making it on the streets to tell how they did, how it was for them when they got out, the struggle they went through, and how it is now. That's the attraction. And if they grab it, right on. And if they don't, that's right on too. But the seat's gonna be there, you know. And the attraction comes, man, from the experience from the past and how it used to be like and how it is now. How it used to be like appeals to them more, because that's where their heads are at right now. See? And that's what I'm so resentful about, because they won't let me in those prisons. I sent my tape in. I spoke at the Seventh World Convention in San Francisco at the Jack Tar Hotel. And I sent my tape in. My tape's all over the United States now. I had people from back east, New York, write me letters telling me that they enjoy my tapes, and they're using them in penitentiaries and institutions, because I know how it used to be like, and I know how a convict thinks, walks, because I was a convict for 17 years. I know how he has to live. I know what he does to escape his feelings. I know all the, you know, I know everything that has to be known, you know, as far, because I actually have that experience. I've actually walked it. So when I share that part in that tape, or I even share in meetings, they all laugh because they all relate. The ones that are there, they've done that kind of, that live that kind of life. So that's where you have to come from sometimes. You have to come from a war story. And I know that it gets old after a while. I hate to hear myself talk about how it used to be like, because that's not where I'm at today. I'm into living and enjoying life without the use of chemicals and being responsible and having a family and the whole trip. That's where my head's at today. But they don't want to hear about my brand new car and my nice home and my credit cards and my financial togetherness and how I'm living out here. Motherfuckers want to hear about, you know, anything else other than that, because they envy that. See, then they're talking about how he's bragging. You know, it's just like, if you really put your mind to it, it's just like keeping up with the Jones. You know what I'm saying? Oh, the Jones bought a brand new car, I'll buy one too. You see? And that's where their heads are at. Their head is so messed up, man, that they're spiritually, physically, mentally, and morally bankrupt in all areas of their life. The only thing they got going is their word and being cool and being smart and having it together and being slick and getting over. So if you go in a penitentiary, they're going to try to take what you got. If you got donuts, they're going to take them. If you got conversation, they'll take that too. You know? But after you leave, man, some of them will probably say, you know, he comes and goes. You know, he's just another person. He ain't nothing. You know, because they got it together. You know, but what you're actually doing is there's going to be that one person that's going to hear out of those 50 people. And that one person, if he makes it, then that's where Narcotics Anonymous become a program of attraction. Because that one person makes it, then he attracts other people, because the word gets out. Joe Blow, the one that just did 10 years, you're going to tell me he's got 3 years clean? I ain't going for it. You know, and that's the attraction right there. And that's what brings other convicts into being clean and sober, because they see Joe Smith being clean and sober with 2 or 3 or 4 years sobriety. And that's what we're talking about. See? So sometimes it's hard, you know, but that's what it's all about when you get into H&I. You know, that's all I want to say that.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Or we'll take it.
My name's Fred, and I'm a drug addict.
Hi, Fred.
We've only got one group within A in Mobile, Alabama. It's just a year and a half old. And we got into the hospital. I'm an ex-con, and I've been in the hospital too. So I know both sides of it. And when the way we got into the hospital is they started bringing some patients to the meeting from an addictive disease unit that they had in the hospital. And I want to just kind of put a question up to y'all and see what you think about it and see how to solve it. We run into a little problem. Finally, we started having meetings in this hospital, in their addictive disease unit, which they treat alcoholics and drug addicts. And some of the patients that had gotten out of the hospital and were still coming to the NA meetings that they was having. And word got back to the director that a couple of them that had gotten out that was in the hospital, that was going to the meetings, had started using it again. But then when they started to come to the meeting at the door, they had electric buzzer and the telephone. You have to pick it up and ask them, tell them who you are and that you want to come to an NA meeting, and then they let you come in. Well, they started going down the names at first, and if he had heard that somebody had slipped and was using outside, even though they were clean and straight at the door, he said they can't come in because they're using. We've heard that they're using, so they can't come in. That's the way it started. Then it developed into the thing where the director said, this NA thing is, these people that are coming in, the primary purpose here is that our people, the patients that we've got in the ward here, we want to make sure that there's not anybody coming in holding. You know, we all know that in the Sahara Desert, and you're a drug addict, you'll find a note somewhere, they're not going to be able to keep it out of the hospital. But he says that the people that are coming in, they're still using outside. He's afraid they're going to bring some in. Or if they're still using, they're losers anyway. He doesn't want nothing but winners coming in the hospital. So now he's closed the meeting. And he's calling it an NA meeting. It's not against the tradition.
Well, like I said before, our traditions do not apply inside institutions because of the fact that we have to do whatever they say to carry the message. Otherwise, we may be out dealing with somebody. You may be the only NA member in your state or in your town, and it may be of prime importance for you to stay clean, and you've got to do whatever they'll make you do to go in and let you talk to the people. Otherwise, you may get loaded. You may help somebody else too, but you got to do whatever they say if you want to go in. And like I say, if you don't, you never know.
Well, what does that do to that suffering drug addict that they stop coming to the door trying to come into a meeting?
Okay, but in the first place, it's not an NA meeting. That's in the first place. Even though you go in there and you talk about Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, it's not an NA meeting. You could call it house meeting, you call it institution meeting, you could call it hospital meeting, you call it whatever the place is. But it's not a Narcotics Anonymous meeting because you're not going by the traditions of NA or A.
How about stuff?
Huh?
Yeah, that's just to let them know what it is, so when they get out on the streets, they'll know about it.
All it is
but
familiarization.
What's that?
All it is a familiarization of NA.
Right.
And the institutions
it's like an
have every
introduction.
right to say who comes in and who goes out because that's their institution. You got to get powerless over that. But on the street, then you go by the tradition.
But they can't put it in the paper, call it an NA group, open meeting, right?
It's not an open meeting. It's not a regular meeting. What we've been doing in Southern California is putting them in the back of the directory on a page that says Southern California Institutional Committee. And we have the same problem. We've been putting recovery house meetings, the same thing, because I don't know, a lot of people are familiar with the recovery houses. Some of us work in them or whatever, and they have rules too. You can't bring somebody if they're loaded to the meeting, and if somebody's been discharged they can't come to a meeting for 30 days after that. And they got all these rules that apply like that. So that's not Narcotics Anonymous per se, and we've had problems with, these are meetings actually in the community, and it seems like it's a regular meeting, and we've had newcomers show up and it's their first meeting and they're told to hit it. You can't stay here. And what are they going to say? Fuck Narcotics Anonymous. When I try to come and clean up and they're telling me I can't come in to the meeting. What kind of shit is this? And so it's the same type of thing. These are just certain things we have to put up with, and whatever an institution tells us, whatever type of institution it is, we have to go along with it.
But what about this? The director tells you to pick out the key people, the winners, and you can let them come in with our meeting with the patients.
Well, you got to do whatever he tells you to do, unless it's things like he tells you you can only bring people if they're loaded, or you can only real crazy things like that. We can't go along with anything that's doing somebody some good, though. As long as it's not doing us any direct harm, we have to go along with it and do it.
But it's not considered a structured NA group. It's just
that's right. It's just an introduction to Narcotics Anonymous. We're carrying the message. There is another way to go, and whatever else we can get through to them. But it is not a regular Narcotics Anonymous meeting. It's actually not Narcotics Anonymous per se, because Narcotics Anonymous is only inside the traditions. Once you get into that, outside the traditions, it's an outside area, and it's not within the realm of NA per se. Okay.
And as long as you don't, you don't break no traditions, just anybody ever confronts you, just say, no, this is just a regular institutional meeting. So you could do anything, manipulate the guard or whatever it takes, just to get in there. That's what's happening.
I'm Charles, I'm alcoholic and drug addict.
Hey, Charles.
Against the NA traditions for an outside institution, say, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council, purchase NA literature to distribute in the hospital or...
No, I've given some to the Catholic Church because they were the priest was the only one that could get inside that facility, and he took it in. And like I said, we carry the message whatever best way we can, and that just happened to be one way that I could get literature into this county jail facility that even Alcoholics Anonymous has never been able to get into. So I gave Father Sebastian Drake the literature, and he brought it in because he had an interest to do so. We sell literature to Hazelton. Hazelton distributes NA literature. There are other organizations. However the message can best be carried, that's what we do.
I'm Don Coleman, alcoholic. I don't know. I found that the way a lot of the institutions that I went in, like the disciplinary barracks at Leavenworth and the Leavenworth Penitentiary, neither one of them have an NA, but I was allowed to come in as an AA member and talk my line on the NA program, because like in the disciplinary barracks, I had a lot of guys come up to me and say, the alcohol problem is not that bad here, but the drug problem is severe. We have nobody to represent, tell about the NA. And that's why, I was here today to find out more about the institutions and how, the NA group can get started in it.
So this is another thing that I've had to do myself, is go in on some Alcoholics Anonymous panels, and I never even drank too much. I don't know too much about alcohol, but what we do not want to create is any public controversy with Alcoholics Anonymous. If they're telling you when you come in on our panel, don't talk about drugs, you want to make sure that you don't, and we don't cause any friction with Alcoholics Anonymous, where in some cases it's like that, where they have certain rules and we don't talk about drugs at this particular meeting, and we've got to go along with that. But in a lot of cases, like I was thinking for Fred, on some of these panels, I slipped in on an AA panel where if I went on an NA panel, this was a few years ago, I don't think they would have let me go in but they let all the alcoholics go in first, and they held me and questioned me for 45 minutes, and put me through all kinds of changes after I'd driven, 250 miles or whatever, and they finally let me in. But this is a way for some of us maybe to kind of slip in the back door, and once they get to know us after a while, and they see us coming up there regularly, then they may let us start an NA meeting. So it's, but we have to make sure that we don't cause any friction with Alcoholics Anonymous, because this has happened in the past. We want to make sure that we don't create any problems. And we don't want to prevent any alcoholic from recovering either by confusing him or talking a bunch of shit that he doesn't understand too. Got anything else? Okay, I don't see any more hands, so why don't we close this meeting, and that's it. Thank you. All right.
I'm not in on.
I want to remind anybody, if you haven't signed and put your name and address down on this paper, if you could, to help us communicate with you.